Hello, I'm Karen van Creveld, and the following presentation describes how my Gene Heap research project has developed over the past 3 months. The aim of this project is to measure the light exposure received by adults in various working environments and to understand the actual daylight availability afforded by a range of architecturally diverse offices within central London. This report will focus on the following components of my field study: the architectural spaces, ethical approval and data protection, participants, measuring instruments and associated software, and the next 3 months. My original intention was to explore 5 offices within the WeWork organisation, but due to internal developments that arose within that company, this became no longer feasible. Therefore, I investigated other options and have managed to secure 4 architecturally diverse offices that meet my study criteria. These offices have varying methods of daylight ingress, including individual skylights and vertical windows, continuous vertical windows, restricted daylight, and large glazed roof lights. The first office is located in Kentish Town and occupies the first floor of a converted Victorian warehouse. Daylight enters the office via individual skylights and windows, the majority of which face east. Office 2 is located within the Waterloo area and occupies the 7th floor of a 1960s office tower block. Daylight enters this office via continuous windows on the north and south facades. The main office space receives daylight from the south. Office 3 is located between King's Cross and Clerkenwell and occupies the ground floor of a converted Victorian warehouse. There is minimal daylight ingress in the main office space due to the very deep plan and architectural layout. The glazed entrance and side door provide virtually no daylight within the main working area. The 4th office is located on the first floor mezzanine level of a converted Victorian train shed that forms part of the new King's Cross redevelopment project. The office is lit via 2 large continuous roof lights facing east and west. All research involving human participants and or their data requires ethical and data protection approval. As the study collects and analyzes non-sensitive data that is gathered via sensors worn by non-vulnerable adults, it falls within the UCL BSEER category of low risk. A full application was submitted to UCL detailing every aspect of this research study, and formal approval was received prior to beginning my fieldwork. I investigated and identified a number of potential office spaces and approached my contacts within each office to ascertain whether they were able to support this study. I sent out office-specific adverts inviting employees to take part. Adverts were disseminated in each office via internal email. My aim was to enlist 5 participants per office, and this was achieved in all but one office. The age range requirement was between 25 and 50 years to ensure that all participants were full-time employees and less likely to be experiencing age-related deterioration in vision. Those who expressed an interest in taking part in my study were given detailed information sheets which explained the context, aims and structure of my study, including the responsibilities and obligations for participants. This was to ensure that they could make fully informed decisions about committing to the project. All participants to date have complied wholeheartedly and enthusiastically with the research process. As required by UCL ethics, all participants completed a formal consent form before the study commenced. Throughout the week, each participant completed a series of questionnaires, including the core Munich chronotype questionnaire, which asks about typical sleep behavior during the preceding 4 weeks. Participants were asked to rate their subjective sleepiness at particular times during the day by completing the Karolinska sleepiness scale in the morning, after lunch, and in the later afternoon, every day for 7 days. Participants were also asked to complete a questionnaire every day about their journeys to and from work and whether or not they spent any time outdoors. I remained present in each office throughout the duration of the study, to manage the handing out and collection of the questionnaires and answer any queries that arose. With regard to the sensors, a number of preliminary meetings were held with Loose Technology Limited, and agreement was reached regarding the specification details and cost of equipment and data collection services. My budget allowed for 5 Loose button sensors to be purchased, together with the Loose Collect app and associated software, which was installed on my mobile phone. I arranged payment and collected my button sensors. Loose Technologies were very helpful and supportive in setting up the app and the sensors. Participants agreed to wear their button sensors at all times except when sleeping and showering for the 7 days of the study, and some came up with some very creative methods of attaching the sensors to their clothing. I sent an email or WhatsApp reminder every morning to each participant during the study week to ensure that they remembered to wear the sensors correctly. This was very effective. I synchronized the sensors with the Collect app on my phone via Bluetooth in the mornings and afternoons each day. The raw data was downloaded directly from the Loose Collect app via email. The downloaded file was saved onto my laptop in both CSV and Excel formats and anonymized. I had intended to ask participants to download the Insight app to use for data collection over the weekends when they would not be in the office. However, after the first week of the study, it became apparent that the 2 Loose apps cannot be easily interchanged without some loss of data. To avoid losing weekend data for the other offices, I arranged to collect participants' button sensors on the Sunday evenings, and we met up in conveniently central locations. I was able to download most of the weekend data then. Participants' names were never used, but instead, for all documentation, participants were given an identification reference, office number plus participant number plus sensor number. Each button sensor was clearly marked with a color-coded label so that each participant was identifiable by their sensor's color, which is a simple method than a numerical reference. Participants' seating positions are clearly marked on the office plans, which will be very useful for future analysis of daylight exposure relative to window positions. UCL kindly allowed me to use the department spectrophotometer, which was properly calibrated by Konica Minolta before my field study began, to ensure reliable data could be recorded. Spectrophotometer measurements were taken throughout the day for each participant in 6 orientations at eye height. This data will be compared with data recorded via the Loose button sensors and a scale derived for the illuminance metric, so that the Loose metrics can be expressed in terms of more traditional photometric units. The spectrophotometer was connected to a Windows laptop onto which I had installed Konica Minolta software. This allowed me to record a number of photometric quantities such as lux, CCT, and dominant wavelength. I repeated these measurements throughout the day and manually recorded the same quantities on site measurement sheets that I had prepared for the study. This process was very helpful for me to begin to understand just how much light was being experienced, and I began to observe patterns within the offices, which hopefully will be clarified further during the analysis stage of this project. The revised timescale shown here maps the current status against the original projected timescale and identifies the necessary adjustments to the proposed timeframe. Difficulties in securing suitable offices was the main reason for the delays to this projected timescale, but this has since been resolved. I have completed my data collection in 3 offices, and all preparations have been made to undertake my study in the 4th office during the first week of January 2020. The next 3 months will be spent collating and analysing the data that I've collected to understand the daylight exposure experienced by participants in 4 different offices. In addition, the recorded data from the spectrophotometer will be compared with the data from the Loose sensors, with the aim of establishing a scale for assessing the reliability of the wearable sensors for research purposes. Looking further ahead, an additional objective of this study is to define a scale of daylight exposure potentials afforded by different architectural forms typically found in our working environments. It is expected that the daylight exposure received in the 4 architectural typologies studied here will differ significantly depending on the orientation, type of windows, and presence of roof lights. Statistical analysis of the data will help establish a hierarchy of daylight availability within the different architectural spaces. Furthermore, the data will be analysed in terms of some of the known impacts of light on our non-image forming processes using a range of both traditional and circadian metrics.